Stevie A, joined by Pastor Leroy, and we have a guest here, Dallas. What's up, bro? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
You're going to see Dallas on a lot more, definitely this summer.
I said, man, you might be our third now, man. We might have to have you here every Tuesday. We'll see what happens.
At 10 o'clock in the morning.
We had a good conversation the other day when we were in your office. So Dallas might be our new. He might be our third person.
Yeah, he might be our new co-host. Yeah, I mean, but now we're really happy to have you on, bro, because you are a deep thinker, and we all sweat and have these crazy conversations. So we thought to bring these crazy conversations kind of to you guys, to the podcast. So today we are going to be talking about, falling angels, Nephilim, the supernatural in the Bible, because I do feel like a lot of the supernatural stuff that is talked about in the Bible, no one really talks about it, right? And even if we are talking about, even like if we're talking about in the first chapter of Genesis, right? Like after Adam and Eve eats the apple and God's saying to someone, they are now like us.
Yeah,
When I'm reading it, the first question that I ask is, who the heck is God talking to?
Yeah.
And questions like that is like the start of, okay, there's something more to than what just meets the eye. Like there's something more to than what's just on what is just in these words, So I wanted to first start off with, like, how did you guys kind of, what kind of started your interest in knowing more about the supernatural and about angels and demons and all of the spiritual encompasses, like, or all of the spiritual sides of, Christianity?
You want to go first?
I'll take it. So what started it for me was I was reading the Catholic Bible, which has a lot more of has like Tobit, has like books like that, which touch a lot more on like the heavenly realm, angels coming down and doing miraculous things. Touches a little bit on demonology, and I was just really interested. It just really piqued my interest. But I found that, like, when we have the Bible that we have today, the King James downward, from all the other versions, they just took out a lot of the books that were, hyper angelic, hyper demonic. It had a lot of that stuff in it, So that's what piqued my interest for,
So basically, you saw that. So you basically went and looked at the other books that were taken out.
Yep.
You're like, there's a lot of stuff in here that's very interesting. So then you studied even more, and when you started reading like the Bible, you started kind of piecing some things together, seeing some stuff in the Bible, doing more research on it. How about you, bro?
Yeah, I think for me, it's the type of church I grew up in, because I mean now. Like the church I grew up in was Pentecostal, so they were always emphasized more on the spiritual side of it. Anyway, you know what I mean. So when you grow up with that, where people are like, getting hands laid on them, you seeing people actually get healed, things like that. Like my mom got healed from cancer at one point. Like I've seen that actually happen. So to me, I've always known and always had more emphasis on learning more about the actual miracle side of the Bible, if that makes sense, So so that's kind of where it started for me,
For sure.
So
so usually it's always these little starts, and then you start to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and then you get to like, okay, this is starting to get weird.
It's kind of like the rabbit trail. It just never ends.
Exactly. It is a rabbit trail that never ends. So let's start with the Old Testament, right? So obviously, I really want to touch on the key part of the sons of God, because I think that is the main start to this thing. Obviously, there's small things in Genesis, like if we're to talk about, Cain's mark, some rumors that, I'm on the side, Cain might still be alive. Today, we're not going down that road. We can do that maybe another podcast. But I really wanted to talk about the sons of God, because there are a few theories with the sons of God, right? The first main view that most people have is that the sons of God are the angels. And then there is the second piece where people think that it's Seth's and Cain's descendants that intermingle together, which came the Nephilim gene and blood.
No, that's ridiculous.
I think that doesn't make sense either. Yeah, because what's the point? What is the point of having?
But I was reading today, and there's something that caught my interest was it talked about the sons of God, but it also talked about the Nephilim being there, and so it made it seem like they were separate from what I was reading.
Interesting. So, all right, yes. So let's read. Let's read Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. It says this: When humans began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Though their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on earth in those days." And also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, they were heroes of the old men of renown.
So yeah, that's the point. I think
That's
you
what-
just made.
that's-
So
yeah.
the Nephilim aren't made. So I think the Nephilim are the children of the sons of the angels in the women, because it references them separately. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which it sometimes does do that in the Bible. You know, it's like they have Rephaim and like Nephilim kind of interchangeable at times. But yeah, I think the way that they reference them separately, like Nephilim are like, I think they're children.
Yeah, I mean, and the only other way that it would make sense in my mind is like if you're coming from Adam and Eve's genes, like I mean, it could be possible to have some type of superhuman ability. I mean, you're coming from, the poster boy for DNA. You know what I mean? Like one of the most perfect beings ever created is Adam and Eve. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting. But the part that got me was they were heroes of the old men of renown.
Yeah.
And so what is interesting is that, and we were talking about this last week, is that, when we look at people like Hercules, when you look at a Zeus, when you look at a Poseidon, one of the questions that I've always gathered was like, where does this creative lore and thought come from? And it could have literally been based off the idea of the sons of God or these fallen angels playing these fake gods and all of these fake things of renown, which could be the reason why when we get to Moses, the idol worship is so crazy. I even thought about, even thinking about Pharaoh, like when you have all of these, I'm thinking about Ramatut, but that's a fake Egyptian god from Marvel. Sorry, but sorry, King the Conqueror. I was reading comics the other day. Sorry, but seriously, but when you think of all these Egyptian gods and things that they pray to, like a part of me thinks like there's no way that they're praying to something and it's not responding back.
Right.
Not saying that these demons are gods, but these demons and spirits, like, I would be crazy to think that these people aren't just, like, a lot of times us as Christians, we think people are dumb and that these people are praying to things and they're not, and these things aren't responding to them. I genuinely believe that when Pharaoh and these Egyptians were worshiping these idols, I believe there was a response.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't think that it was Jesus.
I mean, even if you think about Ezekiel and how, when they were, testing the gods and all that stuff, like, their gods couldn't answer, but they answered to a certain extent. You know what I mean? So there's a clear line that they have some power. It's not the power of the Holy God and the Most High, but it's still power. I mean, when Moses used the staff and he changed it, changed it into snakes and all this other stuff, they were doing the same thing. Like, so we know that there's not just like you said, it's not just everything God does and nobody else has a response. They do, so
exactly.
I think back then it was just like there wasn't as distinctive a line between like the spiritual realm and the world that they lived in. We talk about it all the time. We're back in, why we ask like, why can't God respond like he did like in the Old Testament and stuff like that. And I think it wasn't just him responding. There was other like spiritual beings moving around still,
Yeah, and the flood changes a lot of that. Because it's like you have all of this like spiritual stuff happening, and then when the flood happens, it's kind of like a reset.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, but let's get into what are the Nephilim, the set of base. So the traditional view is that they are a hybrid offspring of angels and humans. And so, and if we go to Jude, 6 and 7 or 2 Peter 2 verses 5, it does link the idea that angels, were into sexual immorality and stuff like that. And we're not going to get into what the Book of Enoch says, because I'm trying to stay pretty because the book, I'm not trying to get that crazy.
Oh wow.
The second thing is that they are a race of mighty giants.
Yeah.
Okay. And some scholars believe that Nephilim were just a race of ancient, warriors or kings rather than hybrids. So these are different ways that people think of what they are. And then Numbers 13 verses 13 talks about how, they mentioned them again when the Israelite spies report that the land of Canaan was inhabited by them. And this is what it says. It says, we saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Enoch come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. And we looked the same to them. Talking about that they were super tall.
So I'm going to go on a little rabbit trail here.
Go ahead, let's go.
So you said something there just a minute ago. The Enoch, like there is a big movement right now in culture, I guess you would say, where we are so focused on the Anunnaki and all these other beings. You know what I mean? So, like, I guess my point is we can see in the Bible where it tells us that they are from Nephilim. And if we think that the Nephilim are opposite, why do we, I guess it goes back to the whole, like, why are we so enamored about other beings? You know what I mean? Like,
there's so many.
I know there's a lot of.
There's so many theories that are like.
And then when Jesus gets baptized, that's the confirmation of the Trinity, because Jesus gets baptized, God says, "This is my son," and then the Holy Spirit descends like a dove, which is the confirmation of that. But go ahead.
Yeah, and so but there's always theories, and this is when you get into I guess you could say borderline blasphemy. There's always theories that there are other powerful beings. There are other powerful gods, so to speak. And so then you get into that with the Anunnaki, which is deep. Like it's just a massive rabbit.
Yeah, I think it's definitely demonic and all that. But my point was, I think we can even.
Who's that guy?
A lot of times we don't reference the Bible when we see it in there.
He's that guy. But he got cooked by Wesley
West
bad. Yeah, because he was taking all these biblical documents that weren't even accredited out of context. But and the thing that a lot of Christians misinterpret is that God never says that these spirits aren't real.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that like a lot of people will say that the Anunnaki are fake. Like, I think that the power they think that they have is fake, but I am not against the idea that some of these people think that they had an experience, because it's proven that people have had experiences with alien beings. There's a lot of stories where people said that they have been abducted by aliens, and when they say the name Jesus, the aliens run. And I do think that we've been preconditioned.
They found bones of Nephilims and all that. It's not like.
But dude, I also think that we've been preconditioned though as kids, because one of the things that I was obsessed with was space. Buzz Lightyear, Superman, right? Superman comes from a planet that from a whole other planet. Even Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? When you think about this view of the Avatar, he has all these past lives that are connected to. They're so growing up, when you think about lore, even reading the Percy Jackson books, there's always been this deep lore of spirits and gods and other powers being tied to the idea of man. And I think that what happens with a lot of people is that when you don't have Jesus as your seatbelt, you're susceptible to having a spiritual experience, just not the right one.
Just not the real one.
Think about it. God calls out so many gods by name in the Bible. He doesn't say that he just says these other gods. He doesn't
Yeah, exactly, and that's where.
And he doesn't even say they're not gods. He, like you said,
he references them. By name, calls them gods.
Yeah.
So. Lowercase
lower.
G,
I think it goes back to what you're saying, with the divine power, and not even divine power, but just power in general. I think it goes back to that because, like we said earlier, the reason why people are wanting to idolize these gods is because they feel like they can get something from them, that they can't necessarily get from God, the Most High, because He comes with stipulations. You know what I mean? But they can get that from Him. They just don't want to. They want to take the shortcut route.
Yeah.
We talked about that before. people were lazy.
Exactly.
So even these ancient beings, most of the time they would have to sacrifice something, or they would sacrifice something to these ancient beings. Why do you think that these ancient beings, or these other lowercase gods, so to speak, called for that? Or do you think that's just something humans came up with?
Would my theory, because I mean, there's really no biblical
there's
proof
no
about this,
proof.
but my theory would be has to be something with like astral projection or inhabiting souls. I'm not necessarily sure, because demons do like to inhabit people.
Yeah, they like to get. They need power
and,
too. So.
And I'm pretty sure Pastor Ron talked about this last week, where he's kind of on the side of when Nephilim died, they became actual demon spirits and stuff like that, and that they're still inhabiting the world. So so I do believe that a lot of the sacrificing of people was to inhabit bodies, and I do believe that I think there are still people to this day where they're just purely inhabited by Satan and by demonic spirits. And that's what I think a lot of the human sacrificing is for, truly trying to inhabit.
So do you think the demonic oppression that we have today is due to Nephilim spirits that are still like roaming the earth? Because like we've already established that like the fallen angels aren't demons. Like they're not the demonic spirits that we think of when we think of demonic oppression, when we think of,
Yeah, I believe so. We live in a world today, and a lot of people might hate that I say this. I think that we are in a world where it's less spirituality and it's more science, and I think science has become a lot of our spirituality. And I'm not saying necessarily us, but I'm saying like the world in general. So if we were reading the Bible, like they had proof that the Nephilim existed. They saw them.
Yeah.
We don't see Nephilim.
No.
But we have scientists that go on these expeditions and they find Nephilim bones. I mean, they literally just found.
We was just talking about that. Yeah.
They literally just found one of the like one of the rocks that Jesus was near during his death, and they're doing all this research and stuff. You know what I mean? So. I
agree with you. I think that's true. Yeah.
And so I think that I think science is a way of demonic worship, if that makes sense. And like when I think of a religion like Scientology, like how they believe they're talking to alien overlords or something like that. That to me seems very demonic. Do
you think? I mean, I think they're smart. They've been around for thousands of years. I think they're smart enough to switch up their tactics. Switch up the way that you can't just.
Oh, demons! Oh, yeah.
You can't just attack. Like, if an angel appeared out of nowhere, it'd probably like, yo, what's happening? Like,
yeah. I mean, even thinking about the fact that scientists now are trying to resurrect like mammoths and just animals that never, or animals that went extinct. Like people might think I'm crazy, but I think there's a spiritual side to how these beings are coming back to life. And and thinking about the fact of AI and even bro, think of AI. AI could go wrong very easily, and all it takes is the mind of. Even
how long has AI been around?
They've been developing it for
decades at this point, but it's finally official.
It's actually. I've done my research.
Go ahead. What is it?
It's actually ancient.
AI. Please tell.
I'm not gonna go too deep because.
All right, give me like a summary.
It is a substance or a technology that's been around for longer than people think.
Okay.
How long?
And it could be demonic, to be honest.
How long? Like what time period?
Yeah, I don't know, decades and decades probably. So at least a couple decades probably. So maybe more, maybe longer than that, honestly.
So like early 1900s?
Yeah, probably even earlier than that.
So okay, so a few things here, and we're going to get back to the two people to think about: Hitler and Genghis Khan. Okay, so we all know that Genghis Khan probably the craziest and without, and I'm not saying he's good, probably the best war general we've ever seen, the best war tactician we've ever, and I think he's better than Hitler. In the ways of war and killing people, because it was just insane. So think about the fact that Genghis Khan has sex with all these females, and now his DNA is across the world. Like there's men, we might have Genghis Khan genes in us, and we might not even know it. I think of the Nephilim gene spread like that. Because because even after Noah's Ark, right, there was still even after the Great Flood, there were still people there, and the theory is that one of Noah's daughters or sons still had the Nephilim gene inside of them, which a lot more Nephilim come, which is like, God, like, so how'd you do it? But
Yeah.
I get it. He wanted to still eradicate the earth before.
So do you think that the insane athletes that we have today, because it talks about how the Nephilim had great feats of strength, some of them were insanely wise. Do you think that like the very intelligent people, like the geniuses that we have, or the physically, like LeBron James, for example, these
Yeah.
people are physical feats of nature,
Yeah.
at this point. Do you think that they have like a touch of the Nephilim gene, so to speak, or
Could be, but Joe Rogan says it best. Joe Rogan always says, like, he said you sometimes have to look. So like when I take a look at like The Rock, right, or even someone like his cousin, like Roman Reigns, they all come from the same family line. And the one thing that Joe Rogan always says is that, like, you got to think about it. These people come from hunters.
Yeah.
Like they come from cavemen where they were out hunting. Like it's built in their DNA to be killers. And so I think that a part of it could be that, and I think that like with us, like even in some of our DNA and genes, we carry some things that we might not know is from our culture, And I'm not talking about slavery even. I'm talking about even before that.
Oh yeah,
I mean, and that is a big part. I mean, there's talks about how like
I mean, you've gotten your DNA done. I've got mine done, and there's. I literally I was on this. I mean, I have this one where I was able to upload all my DNA, and it literally tells me the genes that I have and certain attributes that I get from my DNA. Like, I'll say, like, for instance, it tells you whether you're a sprinter or whether you're a long distance runner, and according to my DNA, I'm a sprinter. You know what I mean? I'm not a long distance runner. Now I don't believe in everything it says, but there is some truth to that. I've known that all my life, that I'm not a long distance runner, and I'm fast. Like, I get off line quick, all that type of stuff. And like you said, it goes back to that. So I don't necessarily think it's it's a touch of and Nephilim. I think it's just God also has given us things in our DNA that He wants us to be at a certain level with. So
I was just asking because I think it's interesting that you think there's still like a Nephilim gene, so to speak, where it's just like you think that you think it would just be dormant. Like we have dormant genes, You think
I definitely. I mean, I definitely think so, but I think that it's kind of shielded by science. I think that science has given us an explanation to a lot of things that back in these times was spiritual to them. If they had the scientists that we had in the times of the Old Testament, not sure it would be as spiritual as what people think.
So if that's the case, do you think we can have the opposite? You can have a God gene.
No. Because then that's borderline like blasphemy. So
I'm asking.
Yeah, no.
It's a question.
I mean, no, I just don't see how.
Yeah, nah. I mean, I don't see that, but I definitely see like a Nephilim-ish gene. But I just don't think it's as potent as I guess as it used to be. Because I mean, we would have heard about it in the times of Jesus and stuff like that. And like when I read like the end of the Bible, it's like God kind of shifts. God's spirituality kind of shifts from, or the spirituality of the Bible, right? In the Old Testament, it's more so like people are having real encounters, like Moses burning bush, right? David kills Goliath with a slingshot and a rock. Then when you get to the New Testament, God speaks more to the apostles through visions. And I felt like visions in that time was the way that God was speaking to them. And the question is, for us today, how is God speaking to us?
I mean, have you ever got hit with a slingshot?
Yeah, if it's, I don't think it's knocked out a 7-foot giant. Knocking out a Nephilim's kind of crazy. I mean,
Well, they did do a.
He was a Nephilim. I think he was a Rephaim. There's a difference.
I mean, he was 9 feet tall. Still, he was
Nephilim were
super strong too, though.
Okay, so
a lot bigger.
But there was
but
back to your point with that.
I'm pretty sure he said he was Nephilim gene though.
He might have been. But even with the slingshot, they did a scientific experiment and showed how basically it was like a bullet hitting him.
But still,
I mean, they've done a lot of stuff.
that kind of strength coming from like a 14-year-old is crazy. You know what I mean?
But they were just built different back then. Can we even
And David was like 5. No, and David's like 5'6", bro.
Caleb was in his hundreds and still like when he got to the promised land, he was still murking.
But imagine Joey's height murking a freaking 9-foot giant. It's kind of crazy.
When I was 14, I wasn't Joey's height.
When
I was 14, I wasn't Joey's height.
But I'm saying, like, imagine you're Joey's like,
You're taller than that?
Imagine
because
you
Joey's
back
like
in the day
5'6".
and-
David, or he's probably even smaller because David, yeah,
He was a
Dave,
shepherd. Are you kidding me?
yeah. So David's even smaller. No, he's definitely strong. But
Yeah,
but no, but
physically they're just built different.
but to knock out a 9-foot giant with a slingshot's crazy.
it still is obscene. I mean, but yeah, I mean,
No, I agree
don't
with
think
you.
it's completely unbelievable.
The last view is they call them the fallen ones. So
Yeah.
some scholars argue the word
Yep.
Nephilim comes from a Hebrew root meaning to fall. So Nephilim might just mean fallen ones, either fallen in morality or fallen warriors. We obviously don't agree with that, because how would they? Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, because I mean the Bible says right here that they were warriors of great renown. So like how would that wouldn't coincide in time?
I
There's
just don't
a lot
understand
of
how.
there's a lot of controversy there with that
Yeah.
one. So
I just don't understand how theologians say stuff like, so like they'll say that the Nephilim are fallen angels, but then it literally talks about the angels who fell. It literally talks about how they are locked away forever. Like it talks about that. So I don't see how they come to these conclusions. Are they just like blatantly?
All right, so
ignoring
can you
it?
break that down for someone that doesn't understand, like how they you said they're locked away forever?
So in Revelations, I mean, it even talks about it in Jude a little bit. It talks about how the angels who fell, that third of the angels who fell from heaven were, locked away in hell with Satan,
Yeah, and I can read. I think it's Jude 6, right? It says, "And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but
Yep.
left their own habitation, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day."
Yep. And we're not at that day yet, And so it's just like
I hope we're not.
and so it's just like I don't see how like theologians are they just like skipping this verse or are they not willing to admit that like there's something else, or is it like I think that like spirituality or like the spiritual realm frightens so many Christians.
Oh, yeah.
Like
yeah.
they're just not willing to talk about it, touch on it, like even like mentioning it can be seen as like demonic. And it's like if you're not willing to have these conversations and you're just willing to just blatantly ignore verses in the Bible.
Yeah. Also, another verse that supports that, 2 Peter 2, verse 4. For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment.
Yeah.
So, like another verse. And obviously the Book of Enoch talked about that too. But so yeah. And the Book of Enoch kind of expands, saying that the fallen angels taught humanity forbidden knowledge, warfare, witchcraft, and astrology. And that the Nephilim caused a destruction on earth, and God sent the flood to wipe them out. And the fallen angels were imprisoned in the abyss until the final judgment. So yeah, that's just more.
It even talks about in Enoch how it talks about a conversation that the Watchers had or the Nephilim had, and one of the things that one of the Nephilim mentions is like. He basically mentions I'm scared to bring down great punishment upon myself from above, like, and it's interesting, like, how, like, they were probably around to witness what happened when the angels fell,
Yeah, I mean,
so
and I think that was a great catastrophe. Like a lot of people don't talk about that. Like Satan turning had to be a freaking war. You know, as in like it was probably insane.
Oh
like,
yeah, 100%.
Even the angels falling, like it's a lot of people kind of view it as like it's regular. Like I do think it was a really big event, that happened.
do you think that was pre Adam and Eve, or do you think that was pre the formation of the earth, the world? Because I mean, different people hold different views on that.
Here are some theories that I've heard. I don't know where I land yet on it. Some theories say that Satan turning and God creating the earth kind of happened kind of at the same time. But I don't know. I don't know because I just don't know. Because, like, if God created the earth, then Satan would have had to fall during the creation. Because earth wasn't a thing, right?
Oftentimes we think of like hell as like a physical space beneath us, kind of like if we dig down deep enough, we can reach it, kind of.
Yeah.
And it says that, and it talks about in not Jude. It talks about in Job when he fell to the earth, it caused like a great commotion, kind of.
Yeah, I am on the side of heaven as a realm.
Yeah, and
it's
it's
an interdimensional thing, not necessarily a place that we can go. And so many people use the concept of like when they say you go up, I still think you're going into a dimension up and a dimension down. Did you guys see the? So there was
kind of like the down, kind of like the talks about that in Stranger Things, where there's like a world like underneath the world, kind of physical realm, kind of, John. You think?
So I think it's I think it is a metaphysical interdimensional world, and I do believe, and this is all me. So don't take this to the bank, but I do think that when you take drugs and stuff, you see a side of the world that you're not supposed to see, you know, and that's why the Bible even talks about the fact of like there's a part where the Bible's like, don't dig too deep into this, you know, and I think we're digging deep enough to where like we're trying to understand at least all that we can know, but we're not actively trying to search and find and go to these like paranormal like places. You know what I mean?
That's why I think the Catholic Church did what they did when they like. I mean, think about in the vaults of the Catholic Church, they have grimoires, they have like these books of like witchcraft, they have so many ancient texts that they just hid away, you know.
And I think, and people might hate me, but I think it is the smart thing to do, because look at how many humans today can't even grasp the idea of the Trinity. You know, there's like humans that can't even grasp the idea of God. So imagine if you give this grandiose view, but I also do think that at the same time, you know, it is up to us as teachers to be able to teach that side of the Bible. So it does kind of suck that we don't have the extra documents, you know, to look at.
Why do you think Christians believe the Trinity? You mentioned the verse before where he comes out the water, God's like, this is my son of whom I'm well pleased, and the angel comes down. But why do you think that means they're synonymous beings?
Synonymous, explain synonymous for me.
Like they're one, but they can function apart from one another. Why do you hold that view?
Why do I hold the view of just the Trinity in general?
Yes.
Well, more so, there's a lot of biblical like support for it.
Evidence.
I mean, let me just pull up some verses right here. So the main thing for me is the Greek is Jesus getting baptized to me is the defining moment.
Yeah.
And then the Great Commission to me is the other proof of where he's saying, no, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then for the Trinity itself, like the Bible is very clear that there's only one God. The Bible is very clear about that there's God, right? And then Jesus is very clear about, you know, and Jesus does refer to the Father as God the Father. But Jesus also says that, you know, like that I am also the Father. You know what I'm saying? Like we are a.
If you've seen me,
it is a three-in-one thing.
If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. There's a lot of verses that you know, say, you know, that
it's hard to, and the hard part that a lot of people understand is that the Trinity works together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like they're like it's so the way that my friend and I literally just talked about this last night in a Bible study, and my friend said you got to view it as like water. Water is ice. You know, water can be just regular water.
But none of them can function together at the same time.
Huh?
I mean that none of them can function together at the same time. So,
but he was using it as
the Trinity.
They can though, because if you can put ice in a cup of water and
but if I were to
make it colder,
but he's using singular thing of water. I can't turn that water into ice and still water.
But he was using the water thing to explain the different forms.
I get it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that water is like a clear example, but the different forms is like I think is the best example. But it's easy to get into things like, you know, to be a modalist or, you know, like all of these different things.
So
but
do you think that we have God's nature down pat? Like
the church in general, no, no way.
I think we have parts of God's nature down pat, but then we still fail.
Do you think we've given him attributed things to him that our idea of what a God should be, instead of just things that are blatantly said?
Absolutely, yeah. We have our own interpretation of God, every single one of us.
Yeah.
And it's flawed because we're human. You know what I mean? That's part of being human. We have a view of most things, and they're not always right, you know. So, like you said, even when we were just talking about a minute ago, like, why do we put these things on God, or why do we look at the Bible as theologians and say, oh, this is this way, when we can clearly see that it's saying something else? Like, it's just human nature. So I agree. Like,
yeah, I mean, exactly. And there's also going to be off teachings about it because
obviously,
because we're not perfect, and I do expect to be wrong when I go to heaven about some things. You know,
what Spurgeon said in best. Yeah, I expect to be wrong about 99% of the things I said.
Exactly. You know, and it's just the truth about it. You know, but The only part that I think the church doesn't do a great job of when it comes to the idea of God is, number one, we don't do a good job of teaching about suffering, and about how suffering is really a spiritual thing, and that when you go to, like even in the times of like Noah's Ark and things like that, like those people of God went through suffering. I also think that we don't do a great job of explaining that, and this is what I need to do as well. Trying to find a way to do it with youth group kids that doesn't make it seem so overwhelming, but we need to communicate like and address the false gods. And when I say that, like, have a conversation like this, where we're saying, yo, like, there's always been spiritual influence in our world, you know? And when we say false gods, we're not saying that these spirits are fake.
Yeah.
When we say false gods, we're saying that these spirits are here, but they're not Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is our God. And so I think that the church has to do a better job of breaking that down, because I do think a lot of people leave Christianity and go to Islam, or they become a Ben Carson, where, you know, I mean, if you know Ben Carson's story, let me just tell you, right? He had an experience. Yeah. So he was in his family room, and he saw 2 aliens come out in front of him, and he screamed for 2 hours straight. And traumatized his children and his wife.
He said he couldn't. He was screaming, but no sound was coming out.
Yeah, and these alien beings were literally staring at him. I mean, and I believe him. You know why, Leroy? Because he cried when he told the story. He lost it. Like, I mean, he literally was crying his eyes out. So I believe every bit that happened.
He lost everything. I mean,
so, do you think that it was an experience, or you think it was demonic?
It was a demonic experience.
Yeah.
I think it was a demonic experience, and demons, they know how to shapeshift the same way Satan.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Satan is a shapeshifter.
Yep.
And I believe that these demons, they came to him and he gave into it, and ever since then he's. And been I
think that's one of the reasons why he was so adamant on, you know, trying to refute the Bible to a certain extent, because what would the enemy want? He wouldn't want you to prove the Bible right. He would want you to prove the Bible wrong. So that way he looks like he's like we're just crazy. Because his whole thing was the Samaritan tablets. His whole thing was, well, if you look at the Samaritan tablets, they were way before the Bible was, and you can't, you know, everything that the Bible got, they got it from the Samaritan tablets and like that was his whole argument from the beginning.
Yeah, and also the Christian faith is the biggest trump, no pun intended, to a lot of his beliefs. That's another reason why he couldn't, because like Islam, they don't really address these things. You know, like yes, they talk about the spiritual world, but Christianity is very heavy in that, and a lot of people don't. And it said, because we live in such a world of practicality and science, people like to avoid the spirituality of Christianity.
Yep.
That's why we have, you know, that's why all of my Calvinist friends, they can tell me the tulip, they can recite every verse, but if I ask them, do they spend deep time in prayer, they won't have an answer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, have you ever felt like demonic oppression?
Have I ever felt demonic oppression?
Or not just in your life or somebody else's life. Have you ever felt like a pressure? Have you been around somebody?
I felt oppression. Like I've never had I've had weird stuff. Like I've seen weird ships vanish, stuff like that. I've never had necessarily a demonic encounter. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think my parents, this might sound spiritual, but I think my parents really, like, my parents prayed over our house a lot. You know, I had some praying parents. My mom prayed every morning against the demons. My mom was a prayer warrior. So I do think that my parents spiritually shielded me from a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've told this story before on we did in the living room on the show and all that stuff, and just I've talked about it a couple times. But when I first got saved, I didn't have a demonic oppression. I had a experience where God opened my eyes to see the demonic around me, and I was actually in town in Wilmington, catching the bus. Because I didn't have a car at the time and I was trying to get to work. But God let me see the demonic around me. Like, he let me see the spirits that were next to me.
You saw it?
Oh, yeah, 100%, bro. He opened he opened my eyes to see the spirits.
With your own eyes?
With my own eyes, bro. And it's one of the most scariest things I ever experienced. Because you do not realize spirits that are connected to people
Yeah.
that you encounter every single day.
Yeah.
It's like that story with Elijah. He's like, open my eyes so I can see. And he
Yeah,
looks out
man,
and
it's-
sees chariots of fire.
It's
and-
crazy.
I don't want to see it, bro.
No, you don't, bro.
I don't.
For real, you don't. I mean,
Would you want to see that?
listen,
Like, I'm good.
The person sitting next to me, bro. I looked over and I'm like, oh crap! Like I'm ready to run out. I'm ready to run
the
out.
demon just staring at you?
Yo, like next to me, bro. And I'm like I would not, like, just looking at that person, I wouldn't have, like, known that. You know what I mean? Because they
Yeah.
weren't acting crazy, but they definitely had some stuff with them that was probably holding them down that they don't even know. You know what I mean? So it's, yeah.
I think when a lot of Christians, they pray, and I see this a lot in Pentecostal, when they pray against demonic oppression, when they pray against spirits such as that, I think they do it wrong.
Okay. Go.
So, like, they'll do I pray against the spirit of, I don't know, let's just,
of lust.
I pray against the spirit of lust. I
Yeah,
pray against
yeah.
the spirit of slothfulness. There's no spirit of lust.
Yeah, I think
There's
lust
no
is just
spirit
an
of
action you got to change.
That's just, this is just, either this person is just going through that, you know, like you said, an action you got to change. But even more specifically, I don't think there's specific spirits for specific things.
Yeah, well,
It never
yeah.
says that, you know?
The spirit of lust is just theologically wrong because to me that I take that as like, okay, you're trying to say a demon is inhabiting a Christian, which we all know if you're a Christian you can't be inhabited by a demon.
And Jesus never said that anyway. He
100%.
literally said, if you have lustful eyes, cut them out. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't say nothing about
it's kind of an
a
ailment.
spirit. Yeah.
It's really an ailment that's
So I
in our
think-
DNA and nature.
I think we pinpoint. I think we place the blame. So, I mean, there's a poem I read and talked about how like and this is not blasphemous. I mean, he talked about how he felt bad. He talked about how he felt bad for the devil because all these people just blame their problems on him, and it's kind of true. Like we attribute human condition, human sin to like these spirits, and we call them out by name. First of all, we're not even doing that right. But it's like, instead of just getting to the root problem, you know?
Mhm.
And I think
100%.
we do that. I think
Yep.
a lot of like, I've seen it so many times. Like even my mom, like she'd be like, I pray against the spirit of laziness. And it's like, what?
Yeah. And it's like
Spirit of
and it's
laziness.
like she's giving Satan power that he doesn't have.
Yeah.
And that is true. A lot of us Christians
Yep.
do give Satan power that he doesn't have.
I was gonna say, well, you got to think about it too. Like we have two things against us, one thing for us. If you look at it in a spiritual way, you have, you know, if you're a believer, you got God that's for you, right?
Yeah.
Jesus that's for you, all that, and then you have flesh, which is us. Yeah, I mean that's our nature. You know what I mean? But then you do have the enemy too. So you got two things against you and one thing for you. And I think a lot of times we mix them up. We think that the enemy is so against us, which he is, but he's not attacking us every single minute of the day.
Yeah,
our
'cause-
flesh
yeah.
is attacking us more every minute of the
That's a
day
great point.
than the enemy.
And
No.
that's a great point because Satan isn't an omnipresent being.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people like. A lot of people don't understand too. And the way that Satan works, right? Like
How do we know this?
that Satan is not an omnipresent. One second, bro. Job chapter 1, verse 7, it says, this verse describes Satan as roaming through the earth and going back and forth in it, indicating that he has a physical location and can travel rather than being everywhere at once. Also, if we go to Matthew 4, verses 11, it says, this verse states that the devil left him, suggesting Satan's presence is not constant and he can be absent from a place. Another thing that isn't talked about, that I think does a lot, astral projection.
Oh yeah.
I think that also plays a role
Demonic side of it.
in a lot of demons being around here too, because there are people that astral project and can go around and mess with people.
Let me just say, if you're astral projecting, do not do it. It is dangerous, man.
Yeah.
People do it. They do it because they find out that they can do it.
Also,
It's dangerous.
Also, Dallas and Leroy, another thing that we have to think about is curses. You know, like a lot of times we think we're being tormented by demons, and it could have been a witch putting a curse
Facts.
on your family. So
Yeah.
so there's a lot of different avenues that
Witchcraft
people.
is still a thing, and I
Yeah.
think I don't. And that's another thing. Christians
That's another
won't
topic,
address.
but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Witchcraft is still a thing. You know, people are still able to do these things, and whether it's like a thing that's passed down, whether it's like an ability that's passed down, or you learned it from somebody else, like that's still mediums and people like that. They still exist.
Exactly, bro.
I mean, there's one up the street, not far from us.
100%. And that's the thing, though, is that so I think Satan is not an omnipresent being.
According to AI, angels are not described as omnipresent in the Bible. The concept of omnipresent, meaning present everywhere at all times, is specifically attributed to God alone. God's omnipresence in the Bible portrays God as having a presence that extends to all places at all times, a concept often referred to as omnipresent.
It doesn't specifically say that.
Angels minister.
It basically just says that verses Jeremiah, it says, "Am I not a God near at hand, declares the Lord, and not a God too far away? Can anyone be hidden in the secret places so that I cannot see him?" Which,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but and that's where I think, like, having the warlocks and the witches and stuff, like, that also covers a lot of the demonic forces that people deal with as well. It's more than just, Satan and demons. There's so many other different, principalities.
I was going to say that. We talked about it earlier, but like, what about the principalities and the spirits and the ones that rule this realm? Like, you know what I mean? And the Bible does talk about that too.
Yeah.
Because when you go back to what you were talking about earlier about the Nephilim roaming and all that, like, so would you say that they're the principalities, or, like, you know what I mean? I don't think they are, but it's a question. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think. Like, I don't think they've all been. I don't believe they've all been wiped out.